إن الحمد لله تعالى نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا ومن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Indeed, all praise is due to Allah. We praise and we seek refuge with Allah from the evil in our souls and from our evil deeds. Those who are guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one can misguide them. Those who are not guided by Allah, there is no guide for them. I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa Sabihi is his servant and messenger. O you who believe, revere Allah, you should be revered and die not, except as Muslims. Amma ba'd. Welcome to ascertain, an organization established to conduct da'wah, to educate and empower those people who come this way to Islam. And apparently for the last 2 weeks I haven't reminded myself and our group that we are a non-castigating, non-indicting, non-critical, non-condemning group. And so I invite you, as I invite myself, to embrace that. To embrace the love for each other, the love for my brother, I want for my brother, I want for my sister, what I want for myself. And particularly as next Sunday will be the Eid, inshallah, of Ramadan. And we are preparing our hearts in this month of Sha'aban for the great teacher, for the great lessons of this holy month, in that every night we'll be listening to about 2 hours of the Quran, inshallah. We will be reading the Quran, we will be increasing our worship and growing, inshallah, spiritually. And I just want to preface this class by saying if somebody wants to get in shape, typically they go to a gym, then they pay a personal trainer. And that personal trainer takes them to where they want to be physically. If there are other things that we want in life, if we don't seem to get algebra or geometry or calculus on our own, then we go to a tutor that will take us to that place that we want to be. And the same way with our Islam. If we really want to grow, then we must learn the conditions to achieve what Allah has promised. So when Allah says that He prescribed fasting that we could obtain taqwa, then we have to know the conditions that are necessary, the right workout, in order to get that. And last week I ended off talking about food. And we do a lot of things around food. And food is a na'am from Allah, it's a blessing from Allah, from which we derive many nutrients and minerals and things like that. But if we are busy in the month of Ramadan with our love for eating, then we will miss the boat, because it is the month of restraint. It is the month of abstinence. It's not the month of indulgence. Indulgence, that's what I'm looking for. So if we are busy with our love for eating and our love for different kinds of food and different qualities and quantities of food, and if that's what we want to do most of the time, what we will do is at the end of Ramadan, typically we will gain weight, and that's what we'll get, because that's what we went for. But if we go into this, that when I approach that iftar table with the spirit of gratitude and with the spirit of restraint, that I will only eat what I need, and I will not be excessive. What we also realize is that when we do overeat in the iftars, then we struggle to worship. If the purpose of Ramadan is to worship, and I do things that cause me not to be able to worship well, then I'm defeating the purpose. It's like if I go to work out, everybody knows that it's a good thing to warm up, to get your muscles warm before you actually work out. So how are we warming up for Ramadan? So we know that if we eat too much in our iftars, then we're going to be lethargic and lazy, and when the Adhan is called for Isha and for Tarawiyah. There's no Adhan for Tarawiyah, but we know the following issue is going to be Tarawiyah. Then we'll say, oh, I just ate so much, I'm just going to go home and go to bed. And so then we miss the Tarawiyah, we miss the blessings of hearing the Quran, and we miss the blessings of the real purpose of this month. When we eat more, it also engages us in other feelings. It gives us energy for other passions other than nearness to Allah. So really and truly, I highly encourage you to really ponder and reflect on that and to implement control and restraint in this month of restraint coming up when it comes to food. Really and truly, you will have much more energy when you're fasting, when you break your fast, if you don't overeat. You'll have more energy if you get up for suhoor in the morning and have a quart of water or something, so that you are continuously hydrating yourself. And I apologize for no cameras this morning, but I don't know what's going on. They're not available to us this morning. Also, we know that eating too much disengages us intellectually. So before a big exam, you don't want to go to an all-you-can-eat buffet, because then your body's going to be using all of its energy to digest food. Excessive focus on food takes us away from the remembrance of the source of peace. Sometimes we get tummy aches, particularly after you've been fasting all day and you eat some of the spicy foods that we like to eat. Then your focus on your physical body, you're no longer focusing on the spiritual. Hungry people are often irritable people who need to serve the desires of their stomach. If you find that you're getting irritable, what do you need to do? You need to do a spiritual warm-up. You need to make dhikr. You need to remember Allah. You need to begin to talk about Allah. You need to look for Allah's kindnesses. We talked about Allah's kindnesses in the signs of nature last night at the potluck. If you are focused on an insatiable desire for fun, your nafs, yourself, will want the freedom to just be a couch potato, to search the television, surf the television or internet, and indulge in all types of entertainment and fun, browsing and surfing. So really you want to remember these things today, making notes of these things, mental notes, actually physical notes, that as these things arrive, I want to address them. That I want this to be a Ramadan where I achieve God consciousness. God consciousness would mean that you are thinking about Allah. If you are thinking about yourself, then more than likely you are not thinking about Allah. If you keep doing that, it would engage you intellectually to be an A student. So in other words, if you're controlling what you eat, if you are processing what you're doing, you are conscious that the goal of this month is to obtain God consciousness. That my consciousness is about God and pleasing God and obeying God. Then you will be an A student in the month of Ramadan. Fasting as prescribed by Allah intends to liberate us, not oppress us. And you need to remind yourself, because you may feel oppressed, you may feel deprivation sometimes, but you have to remind yourself, no, there's a higher goal in this. There's a higher reward in this. This reward only comes from Allah. And this is one of the unlimited rewards. All of the other things in Islam have it 10 times or 7 times or 27 times, or if you pray in this masjid, there are various, but this one is unlimited, and the rewarder is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when your thinking is not according to Allah and His Messenger, you need to correct your thinking. Every day when I'm eating and drinking and focusing on materialistic things, it is easy for me to be disengaged from Allah's love, mercy, and compassion, and in denial of those addictions to food, drink, entertainment, and other passions, to the point that I fail to realize that there is life beyond these things, another dimension. All of the things that I mentioned are about this life of this world. We talked about life and hayat last night, and the concept of how The average man will live 76 years, the average woman will live 81, and that's it. But what we're working for in this month is for an eternal reward. A reward that's forever, that never ends, a reward of bliss forever. So we do without now in order to have later. And it's a very interesting principle, because if you do without what others have, you'll be able to have what others don't have later, both in the material realm and the spiritual realm. And sometimes we don't think about that. The people that want everything that other people have, they have lots of credit card debt and lots of stress. And then later on, they live very difficult retirements. Well, think about that in the spiritual realm. You must restrain yourself. You must not get caught up in the allurement of the world, this very short temporal probationary period. There is joy, pleasure, and happiness in a source that is not physical and materialistic, like food, drinks, and entertainment, that delude us to believe that they are the means and ways to pleasure and happiness. There are people that believe, I'll be happy if I go to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. I'll be happy if I go and I watch this movie that's coming out this, next month. But what will you be if you don't inherit paradise? How unhappy will you be at the end of this life on this earth, this probationary period, if you don't inherit paradise? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does that for us from His compassion, and we sacrifice passions for the 5 daily prayers and fasting in Ramadan. So consciously sacrifice your passions, your lower passions, the passions that will not get you anywhere except a satisfaction in this world. At least 5 times a day we must interrupt what we are doing, and what we are doing is usually mundane and temporal, to train us to realize that we must break from these things so that we don't become dependent, addicted, and a prisoner to what we do daily and our desires. We absolutely become prisoners to our daily worldly habits, but do we become prisoners, slaves, servants of Allah to the habits that He has asked us to establish in our life? And that is what it takes if we want to have eternal bliss. I break from the daily mundane so that my inner self connects with the source of peace, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and does not get used to being in a state of focus on the material, mundane, and worldly things. So when we stop to pray and we put our hands up, Allahu Akbar, inshallah, that is where our consciousness is, in that prayer. That's what it means to pray with Yeshua, that your consciousness is about Allah. And about, I've come here naked before Allah to surrender myself. But if we are standing in prayer, we're thinking about all the things in the world that are alluring to us. They're little lights flashing. Ooh, did I do this? Did I do that? Oh, I'd like to be doing this. Then that's the reward that we will get. We will get the reward of the world. But we will not get a great reward in the hereafter. The world and our desires, if they are not drawing me closer to the source of peace, are detrimental to my eternal soul. So we have to look very seriously that if everything I'm doing is not drawing me to the source of peace, then it is detrimental to my soul. So really, really, I hope and pray that, I know that this is tough. People say, oh my God, this sounds so difficult. Well, it's difficult when I go to the gym. It's difficult when I get on the cycle and do 10 miles. But I recognize the benefits of that for my health. At the same level, at a higher level, we should recognize the benefits of our spiritual health. That is how our heart dies. Our heart dies when it is only focused and fed by the world. That is how we develop more and more inner ailments, more greed, more arrogance, more pride, more prejudice, and the list goes on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me respite. Fasting at least once during the year for 1 month, in addition to the highly recommended days for fasting like Mondays and Thursdays, and the 3 days in the middle of the month, and the month of Sha'aban, and the first 6 days of Shawwal, are for us an opportunity to liberate ourselves, our lower self, from the attachments and addictions that we may develop for other created things. Maybe I need to say that again. I know there's a lot of distractions in the room, but let's look at that again. So Allah gives us respite. He gives us a time of reflection so that we can become aware of our attachments and addictions for created things instead of the Creator. Everybody get that? And so if our focus is not awareness of that, we will get lost in that and completely trapped, and we will be a prisoner to those addictions. And we will say, I can't have a day without my coffee. We talk like this. We actually talk, I can't have a day without my pita bread. I can't have a day without my home. We consistently talk about this, and we actually believe this, that we cannot live without these attachments, these worldly attachments, these created things. But what I want to propose to you is that you cannot live without developing your soul. You will not live very long. You may live 76 to 81 years on average, but then that's it. We really need to reflect on that and ponder on that. For Allah's sake, everyone here knows that we are not only physical beings. Many of us go to sleep and travel in our dreams. This week I went to South Africa in my dreams, and it was very real. When I woke up, I was actually surprised that I was back in America already. I felt like I'd been on a mirage, but I even dreamed that someone I used to work for offered me a job. It was very real for me. We travel to the past and to the future. I was in the past. That person that I work for is probably 90 years old now if they're still alive. But I was in the moment when I was in that dream. This is not the characteristic of a physical dimension. We are more than just that. We are more than just physical dimensions. So we have to connect to the spiritual dimension. We feel physical pain in one dimension and emotional pain in another. And I know many of us today have pain. Some of us physical pain, some of us emotional pain. Do we ever have spiritual pain? Are we ever pained that our soul is not developing at a pace that really pleases Allah? Do we ever have spiritual pain in recognizing that my soul is not connected to the one that created me? But we often talk about emotional and physical pain. But do you ever hear anybody talk about spiritual pain? And when you begin to get in touch with that, it is a sign that you're growing. You're having growing pains. And this is a good sign. It's part of the struggle. It's part of the jihad. We feel joy. When we talk about feeling joy, how many dimensions do we experience that on? Do we experience joy when our nafs are satisfied? Do we feel joy when we approach Allah in prayer, or do we say, oh my God, I got to do that again? We need to ask ourselves these questions, because this is how we examine ourselves spiritually, so that we know where we need to go. Your gym instructor will say, I need you to do the following things, and he is diagnosing or determining how well you're doing and what you need to do to get where you want to go. So are we doing that spiritually? Do we go to our imams? Do we go to our teachers? Do we even have a spiritual teacher? Or do we just say, well, I'll just leave that and whatever? And I don't have to have any real goals set to that. We go to school, it's a physical act. We get on the bus, we get on our cars, we go to school, we go to classes, we do what we do, it's physical. And we have a whole university system, interestingly enough, that is imposing philosophies on us all the time. Philosophies that are contrary to the Islamic paradigm. Philosophies of materialism and humanism. And these institutions focus on these philosophies. And philosophies come in eras and they go. But the beauty of what we have is the haq. It's not a philosophy. It was what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained. It is a solution for all of our ills. How do I nourish myself? How do I nourish these things? The things I'm talking about are not nourished by eating, sleeping, drinking, copulating, and playing. I must find out, if I don't know, how to develop the soul and form it in accordance with what it is meant to be, what it was made for. And what was it made for? I created men and jinns for naught, except that they worship me. It has to be calculated and conscious that every day, if you woke up and you had this on your Android, iPhone, Post-it, I must find out today, if I don't know how to develop my soul and form it in accordance with what it is meant to be and imbue it with consciousness of Allah. And that is the opportunity we have in the month of Ramadan. We won't find any commercials, for the most part, about how to become pious. I have never seen a commercial about how to obtain God consciousness. Now, I've heard different people preach, but I don't think you're going to find a commercial on Uverse or Prism TV about how to develop your soul. You can find self-help books, yes, but the best self-help book is the Quran. It is the criteria. In Surah 91, verses 7 to 10, consider the human self or personality and how it is formed in accordance with what it is meant to be, what it was made for, and how it is imbued with moral failings as well as with consciousness of God. To a happy state shall indeed attain he or she who causes the self to grow in purity. And truly lost is he or she who buries it in darkness. So, if you don't know how to cause the self to grow in purity, then you need to find somebody that can teach you. Or you at least need to have a plan on how you're going to get there. And I ask you not to raise your hand, but to look inside your heart and say, what is my plan to fulfill this verse? Consider this human self or personality and how it is formed in accordance with what it is meant to be. Well, what it was meant to be was it was born on a fitra, it was born perfect, and it was meant to maintain that. It was meant to go back to that, to always being connected to Allah, conscious of Allah, purifying itself. Ramadan is for purification. Marriage is for purification. Salat is for purification. Zakat is for purification. Everything in the Muslim world that Allah has prescribed for us is for purification. So what is it made for? It's made to serve Allah. We already determined that. Allah created men and jinns for naught except to serve Him, for worship. And how it is imbued with moral failings as well as with consciousness of God, to a happy state shall indeed attain he or she who causes. You have to be the causal effect of your spiritual growth. The person who causes the self to grow in purity, and truly lost is he or she who buries it in darkness. So everything that you do in this month of Sha'aban, and until a week from tomorrow, when Ramadan starts, inshaAllah, you really want to heighten your consciousness. Is this what I'm doing going to cause me to grow in Allah consciousness? Is this going to cause me to purify myself, or is this going to cause me to connect to the world? And I'll just give a very simple example. If I sit down and I watch TV, and it is romanticized to drink and to do other things that are contrary to the teaching of Islam, then what am I going to cause myself to do? I want to be like them. How many people grow up with idols on their walls that they want to be like because it is alluring to them? Versus the people that have little verses of Quran all around them, and that's what I want to obtain. I only want to be an idol in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By the soul and the proportion and order given to it, and its enlightenment as to its wrong and its right, truly he succeeds that purifies it, and he fails that corrupts it. How much attention are we giving to the soul? If I spend an hour or 2 hours at the gym every day, how much time do I spend developing my soul? This eternal part, this actual my origin. I originated as a soul in the world of the souls before they were placed on this earth. How much am I doing to go back there to develop that? The commercials are all about eat this, drink this, wear this, play there, and so on. All appealing to the dimensions of the physical self. I'm always amazed at the commercials for makeup. Cover girl. If the girl is a Muslima, she doesn't need any covering.
No girl. Nobody.
Because she's just the very best. She's the Rolls Royce of the human race. Have you ever seen a commercial instructing you to be kind? Yes, occasionally you'll see UNICEF or something encouraging you to do something, but for the most part we don't see a lot of that are saying be generous, hospitable. We see them asking for money, but for the most part they're not encouraging us to be hospitable unless it's for their cause. Forgiving. If you see a commercial that enjoins you to be humble, give me a call and let me watch it too. I'd like to see that. Commercials teaching you to be modest. When have you seen one? To be respectful. To develop morals. Have you ever heard a commercial that says, think about your heart? And I don't mean the one that's beating, because you do get commercials about those. Advertising cardiologists and medicines for cardiac conditions. But when did you hear a condition, a commercial, what is the condition of your heart, your spiritual heart? Have you ever heard a commercial that said, think of your heart, don't only think of your stomach? No, you hear about the Big Gulp, the Whopper, the Big Mac. Everything is big in that appeal. Everybody wants bigger and better. And it's not even food. It's all a bunch of fillers and stuff to make you feel like you want to eat more. Those that don't have it in themselves don't think that way and can't offer it, and they don't know any better. So I want to encourage the few students that I have to think that way. To have that you are armed with this consciousness of what am I really doing? What am I doing in this moment that's for the hereafter? Versus what am I doing in this moment right now that gives me pleasure in this world? The fast of Ramadan liberates us from our passions and addictions and reminds us that there is life beyond the physical life. There is joy beyond material joy. During Ramadan, when we abstain voluntarily from those elements I have mentioned, we also begin not only to talk about kindness and compassion, but actually feel kindness and compassion and actualize it more. So what you actually see is people do report that they do more acts of kindness in the month of Ramadan, that they tend to give more freely in the month of Ramadan. They feed more people in the month of Ramadan. when we voluntarily stop from eating from dawn till sunset, then perhaps if we do that with focus, then we begin to realize that it might mean to be what it might mean to be homeless or to be without food. We have a huge homeless population in Orlando. We have a huge population of children in school that are not fed from Friday when they leave school to Monday morning when they go back. Do we really know about that? Perhaps in our pondering and our reflection and our spiritual search, preparing for the month of Ramadan, we want to feel that, so that perhaps we might be more grateful to Allah. We actually want, well, I want to experience these hunger pains. I thank you for this kindness to help me relate to those who are less fortunate. At least when we fast, we have a home to go to, and for many of us, we visit many of our friends' homes to break our fast. And when we go there, it's not a time of restraint. It's usually a time of pigging out. The conversation on the way there, my wife's shaking her head because she doesn't like it, but I have to teach you the truth. Do you want to get the maximum reward out of Ramadan, or do you just want to just get through this thing? If on the way to these places every night, your thought and your consciousness is about this food and what we're going to have and how exciting it's going to be to gossip with a bunch of people, you're missing the boat. You're not going to get any reward for your fasting. And we do it every year. If you just ride in the car with a bunch of people, they will talk about, oh, last night we had an iftar, such and such, and they had all of this and this. It's all about the world. All I want to know is, well, how's your soul doing? Is your soul better today than it was yesterday? If we understand what fasting means, it will enable us to develop, consequently, compassion and care for those in need, for those desperate, for those homeless, for those who are hungry. We not only talk about it, but we through fasting are moved in this month of giving to give them money and food. We feel their pain in our heart and we say, there, but by the grace of God go I. Fasting is not about celebrating eating, it is about celebrating not eating. Fasting is not about celebrating eating, it's about celebrating that we're not eating. It is celebrating an inner dimension of fulfillment and nourishment. An inner dimension of fulfillment and nourishment. Do you feel nurtured spiritually? And what can I do today in Sha'ban? What can I do in Ramadan to feel nurtured? Not so that my body feels nurtured, but that my spirit feels nurtured. It seems that in areas highly populated by Muslims, Muslims have developed this habit of eating more during Ramadan than outside of Ramadan. Yes, I know we feed a lot of people as well, but I'm talking about on the individual spiritual basis, we need to measure how much we're eating and how does it affect my worship. Does it enhance my soul growth? Or does it put me to sleep? People increase their budgets to eat in this month, food and desserts in Ramadan, that they don't usually eat outside of Ramadan. And this is in the subject of tabdir. It is excess. Instead of having one dessert, we have 5 desserts. How is this spiritual? How is this anything but indulgence? Indulgence from the nafs. How can we call any of that spiritual? How can we call any of that food for the soul? Instead of celebrating the ruh, the spirit and the heart, which are not nourished by physical food, we continue to celebrate food to the extent that even many non-Muslims are known to write on Ramadan, and part of what they write in their columns is about the type of succulent foods and delicious desserts that are prepared in Muslim homes on the occasion of Ramadan. They sometimes include recipes for Ramadan. It's real funny because I remember getting one of the national Islamic magazines, and on the front it actually talked about Ramadan recipes. Not Ramadan abstinence, but Ramadan indulgence. The very opposite of what I know this magazine and the people behind this magazine really want. But we get caught up. Is this what Ramadan is intended to celebrate? And folks, I'm telling you, if you don't remind yourself every day of this horrible lesson today that you don't really like to hear, then that's what you'll get in the month of Ramadan. You'll just go through this process miserable. Allah said He did not need for you to be hungry and thirsty. What He wants for you is to obtain consciousness of Him. And this is the very reason why many people do not benefit from fasting. Because they don't adhere to these conditions that I'm talking about. If you study the fiqh, all of these conditions are laid out. This is how you fast. The same way that if you don't do certain exercises at the gym correctly, you'll put your back out. You will hurt yourself instead of help yourself. If you don't do Ramadan according to the conditions that Allah has laid out, you will more than likely hurt yourself because you will not eat all day and then you will gorge at night with 4.5 cups of rice on a plate, and then you'll go into a sugar frenzy. Ramadan is about celebrating God consciousness, not eating. Ramadan is about discovering joy and a pleasure, not in the realm of the physical, but in the realm of the heart, the soul, and the spiritual realm. And after all, that's where real joy derives. The temporal joy is the joy of a new car. It's very short-lived.